Om Mani Padme Hum. Oma. Oma Hum.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche. Thank you for continuing to teach on this very important text. And good morning, Katrina Brooks. We're so fortunate to have such a capable translator. And welcome to everyone online. Our apologies for the technical delays. We're happy
I think she used to.
Sound check, sound check.
Good morning. Gala Rinpoche, can you hear us? It's very low.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. Gala Rinpoche, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Hello? Can you hear us? Hello, hello. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. We are ready to go.
Okay, Katrina is still not here.
Oh yeah,
So
don't
we'll
worry,
wait.
we can wait.
Okay. Thank you.
But I mean we are ready. Everything's fine here. Did you see the video?
Yes, we see.
And okay.
And Geshe Thabkhe, does he have his microphone? Can we test his microphone?
Good morning. Watu tele. Ah, abu sengi tuwe. Oh, tanda losa ole medo. Yo med.
Want to respond? No. Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Okay, looks like everything's ready.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, and good morning, Katrina, and welcome to all the online participants. We're happy that you can join us this morning, and we'll begin with some preliminary prayers. I believe the link to those is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully.
Recording in progress.
Perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratnam Mandala Kamnirayatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until
by the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Disongen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Geshe Chimbu Shole Sung Les. Juju Ka Sung Dwa. Chidar Chemu Me Na Tirum Nas. Chidar Pesh Chane Sung Dwa. Chidar Penas. Chemu Me Na Tirum Nes. Chemu Me Na Che. Timba Mambo Tip Tene. Changa the Nabu Che, Mambo Tip Nabu Che. Chita Chemu Me Na Tirum. Nes do. Dinegab Nekab Chilase. The Chemu Me Na Tirum. Lord, you catch Ramnase. Lord, catch some Giringlia. Ne, so sever nave. Lord, the catch some Ringlia. Sever, Navar Chigri. Chiter Semu Mena in room ne. Lord, you catch Ramnatam Bata. Oh, Tina, she studied Pechara. Semu Mena in room Chete Sude. Razi, Quabes in Jesolia, Nam Yuhimarazo. Sem de Manchevate. Sem Jikuno in the Lunga Chuba. Manchevate, Tiba. Nabum, the US. Oh, Tina, she thought the Chibe Messi. You could tin on it, is it tin on it? Cup Chilia. Any lawyer, Jovenashi. Razicula. Carwakivich. Chegu, Samsung, Samlo. Tangasam. Jalam the Pesita, something. What the Pedera. Yeah, this is on.
So here from the teachings of the Master Shantideva, from his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, he gives this verse, which says, it gives this example of just like as lightning illuminates the darkness of a cloudy night for just an instant, in the same way, by the power of Buddha, occasionally people's minds are momentarily inclined toward merit. So here, just in the way that if we could imagine like a dark night that's covered over with thick clouds, and in just for one instant, the flash of lightning kind of illuminates that. In just the same way, like our normal state of mind is inclined toward non-virtuous, afflictive kinds of things. And then our actions of body and speech follow after that. And so most of our intentions and actions are non-virtuous, sort of like this dark night. But there are times, occasionally, just like this flash of lightning, when our mind stream has this kind of positive intention, thinking, I need to do something virtuous, I need to do something positive. And so that kind of state of mind is something that is extremely rare, like an instant of lightning illuminating a very dark night.
Ishin sanje tuye jalam na jigden sunam lodro tanga chu. Ishin se tawa na ishin ngaran zulrawa. Sanje ta sanje jituba am ya chanju semba te dale chue tue ne. I paksha ke kap liya ti paksha se ne. Ke chawala choya ta kewa tuge ke samlo tanga cham. Ishin sanje tuye jalam na se sita cham rech se. Jigden sunam lodro tanga. Kewa chakwe be sunam jo lodi. Angare sam lo keji tuana shi. Yu sam ring lan jong gre song do. Oh, tanda gar song gre sene ngara so. Thongma me ne ta de pa do. Ne me ki wa de se chambo. Yu chon tu. Kewa de ha ja nyon nyon ma do me ke. Oh, jinde yin de ngara so kewa sang bo le ya ta. Kewe ju de nyon nyon. Kewa ngba la ya ta tu nge ju de se me ba yo ese. Yin de ta de so pa. Kibaya, Payata, Yoya, Payata, Kibaba, Somyagi, Tabliang, Barto, Sango, Songa, Songa.
So here again, it is, as this verse says, giving this example of a flash of lightning illuminating a very dark night for just an instant. In the same way, sort of by the power of the Buddha, occasionally people's minds are momentarily inclined toward merit. So due to the sort of power of imprints awakening in our mind from previous contact with Buddhas and so forth, we have the kind of inclination to make an effort to have a positive, virtuous intention. But compared to the kind of darkness of this long night, it's something that is like just an instant, just a moment, sort of just at the edge of possibility. So this is something that is a very short period. When we look at since beginningless time, we have been under the influence of our afflictive emotions and engaged in many negative actions. There are sort of countless non-virtues. They're inexhaustible almost. And yet there are these times, these brief moments when we turn toward virtue, when we have a kind of virtuous thought or make effort toward virtue. And we need to really try to take advantage of that, to use those moments and opportunities to increase our virtue.
Oh yeah. Today kewa nyamju ni la tas omara tindu. Oh ti indu kasoda. Oh ngarajo tikwe top chembo ta. Ne kewa nyamchunju o yimbe tinde tikwe tila sungwa no. Ta tikwe pa ngarsa we tikwe taye ta. Ne tinde la ya tikwe start meso wa. Ini tikwa sa bata tawa ne pa meba soya tapshile bego de sungora. Oh ti bego de ne telia tapshi chodo juwa de karasana janju gu sem ni bute de sungora. Kunzup janju yi sem da dandam janju yi sem se yora. Kunzup janju yi sem se de sanje yi kusu sem jelia chö tengen suku da suji ko 유절이야 무슨 나게 건데 유로체네 네 현달의 최대한 게 단계들이야 네 수고스 거라 이라 군주배 거라 추구다 수고스니 거도와 수기 구스도 수기 남바테니 유절은 무슨 제유유배 거라 수고스 거라 추구스도 되나 수기게 방바다 또 배연데 되더라 추구스 거라 어디 누가서 되네 군주배고 심지어 탐재게 저쪽에 그것이 내 군대지 네 수고 남바테니 최도네 배산제게 고만 토바서 인삼배 샘께버려 군주 샘께에서라 뒤여봐야나 심지어 탐재게 저쪽에 최도 산제게 고만 토바서 인삼 심지어 샘배 딱배 샘제배 장주고 샘께 참배나 내가 알아서 배티고 봐 딱바다 마음 배티고 준도 메사버체 괜찮거든요. 그래서 거라. 전담 장주기 샘되게 이거게 사면대 제가 싸워내 봐야 돼요. 동반이 또 전담 샘 비에시려라. 뒤 이게 될 그래서 거라.
So here, then as the next verse says, thus virtue is perpetually ever so feeble, while the power of vice is great and extremely dreadful. If there were no spirit of perfect awakening, what other virtue would overcome it? So here, recognizing that really we are in a situation where our virtues, our merits are quite weak. And so we should, while we are thinking of this, make an effort to purify, to confess those negativities that we have accumulated in the past, and make an effort not to accumulate new non-virtues, to try to turn our mind toward the positive, toward the virtuous. And really, what is the supreme method for doing that? What is the best method? It is bodhicitta, this attitude of the mind of awakening, both conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. So here, conventional bodhicitta corresponds with the kind of resultant form body of a Buddha, that kind of body that is able to actually encounter other beings and teach them the Dharma, show them this kind of a path. And so the desire to attain that sort of state, wherein we have the ability to actually fully benefit other sentient beings through teaching them the Dharma, this is the kind of aspiration of conventional bodhicitta. May I be able to attain that state of Buddhahood in which I have this kind of body where I can teach to others, this form body. As well, one is desiring to obtain the truth body. This corresponds really to ultimate bodhicitta in the sense that the truth body is those abandonments and realizations within the continuum of that being, although this doesn't have the capacity to teach to others. But recognizing that it is only the realization of emptiness that is able to eliminate all faults and develop all virtuous qualities, we give rise to this attitude of wanting to work within our own mind to try to cultivate that realization of emptiness and try to develop those sorts of positive attitudes. So this kind of mind of awakening, the mind of bodhicitta, both conventional and ultimate, is the best method. Yeah, Dixon. Yeah, Dixon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did you say? Oh, that and that car should sing around. Tibangarsa, Tayeta. It's a delia, Tiba Kunja, Maya, Tondalia, Agbe Shanji, Chanju, Semlia, Committee case of Brisongora, Shembegicho, Shala Chambata Sawa, or Ninji, Chambata Sawa, Ninji Silver. O Shalia Pensim, Sawa Pan, Shala Pensim Chaya, or D, Ketchum Brisongora. Teletani Tibata Viore. Karasne Tiba Mancha, Tengarazo, Kiwa Kandrijilana, Simja Shemi, Kiwa Lambena, Michus of Chidan Droyora, Tundravachina, Kotundrichis of Chidan Droyorto, or T in the Teletiba Teletin Tipasaviorto. Shall Sawachi, Socha, Machimba Tiba, shall never use Tiba Mamusaviora, Manchate. This was that Tiba Tagu Yona, Simjelia, Nebacheba Teletani, Tiba Yogi, Pensim Chambayena. Ngarsak beti batu pa chang, ini sendiri tiba nyuru dugera. Tapi saya cibe chanju usem itu sembe ke samlo. Rale saya kece wacini. Oh ini saya semje tamje ke tup genge. Sanje je koban toba cawo nyabene di samlo. Shuk cemburu do. Susu le saya kece waci. Saya je tanda tarshimba tup genge. Ngakyo kuse yende kunde je kansa ci mau bana jura cagi samde. Samba pe nyungdu chimburwa. O teletene ne tibata yora. Ngaranzo tina shi samlu chegura. Nga shuki de kig marde o nge kyawa kaze ne kale kyone. Tardu ke meide simje tamje ke tutonge kya kunsengi yonde kundengi kansa chi chagi sam. Yitunda le tanda kya na rere ne pangi sam. Yonde na rere ne tugi sam. Sangye ji koban tobe chedu Tugi Sambena, Tiba Mabu Dagiora. Karasa Tiba says Simjel tennis Sagiosa, Simjela pencil chambene, Tiba Dagiora. What do you do around to Tiba Daguyona? Champagne Chanju Sem, Chamba, Ninji. Oh, Tezuli, the new combat Gumgina, Tiba Dagrese, Narsa Wateta, Shinji Tiba Kinji and Yor at Guara. This on the Garazo, Immerere Susu Messenalia. O tiring Yamutelage, Simjelia, Sawa, Nebe, Severis, Cubet, Tibakaya, Chigme, Samsa. Simjela Pendo, we cook up courage on a pendo to be some Lutayena. Any Miguel Pang be Sochibala, so one Miguel Pang be Kawatugre. This some Lomadana Kawatobe Yomare. Mima say now, come Mima say, Miss Sebe, Diba Yomare Matoji, Miss Pangbe, Yawamarua. In a key drachina, Miss Egmarwa, Kumakumare, Chinshek Marisha, Kugavamara. You could Tiba Masa and Matochi. Yawake, Pangbe, Yawake to Umara. Naranzo and Yemanizi, so Chegmar, Chinshek Mara, Millet Sawachigomar. Imagine, Kulumena Pambas Kemarwa, Kumaja, the Chichen, the Chandahot, and the Keomarwa. Niri Mesinalia, or getting Yamutilia. Simjela Tseveris, given the Vakaya Chigme, Jiniji Pemba to a show, Mamma Bana Simja Tamje get her to Tungege, 그래서 연대 군대 기부실은 좋아쇼 삼자 삼을 다에나 에 되바마 다해다 아니 소소 메치날레 좋아도라 되바파에 되게 같아 어디 계신 분에 송도 해야
So here again, we need to make an effort to purify those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past and try to prevent ourselves from continuing to engage in such activities. And the most powerful way to do this is by generating this attitude, this mind of awakening that exchanges self and other, that really sees the aims and needs of others as more important than one's own. And so here, cultivating attitudes of love and compassion for others really is the most powerful way to purify those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past. We are trying to abandon those kinds of negativities, and negativities are actions that are harmful to others, and try to benefit them as much as we can. So when we think about how it is that we accumulate negative actions, it is, well, we're all, even animals are sort of connected with a society. We accumulate negativities in relation to other beings generally. So we kill them or steal from them and so forth. And in order then to purify those kinds of negative actions, we should cultivate the opposite, cultivate this wish to benefit others, cultivate love and compassion for them. And so this, we are able to, generating those kinds of attitudes really reduces the harm that we cause to others and helps us generate this wish to benefit them. So this is dependent again on this kind of exchanging our own aims for those of others. And this is such an incredibly powerful mind. We have accumulated those negativities in relation to other beings. And by developing such a wish to help them, to fulfill their aims fully, to become a kind of being like a Buddha who is able to benefit other sentient beings because they have removed all fault and developed all good qualities. That kind of aspiration, that kind of wish is something that is going to purify many faults that we have accumulated. So again, it will also help us to reduce those kinds of negativities in the future, thinking about wishing to benefit others, having love and compassion for them. We will be less inclined to cause them harm. So here, every day in our life, we should have this kind of attitude and intention, thinking, I'm not going to harm others. I'm not going to do anything that is going to create negativities or cause harm to them. And I'm going to try to benefit them as much as I can. By setting this intention, we actually cultivate virtues. It may be the case that, say, like even a dog might go through its day without killing or stealing or lying, but they're not accumulating those negativities, yet they're not accumulating virtue either, because we have to cultivate virtue. We have to make an intention to abandon those things. So by thinking, I'm not going to kill or steal or lie and so forth, that's how we actually generate virtues, rather than just happening not to do those things. So here, this kind of development of bodhicitta, this kind of attitude of wishing to become a Buddha, a being that is able to fully benefit others through having abandoned all faults and developed all good qualities, this is something that is incredibly powerful in removing our previous faults, purifying those previous faults, and preventing us, reducing those that we accumulate in the future. So this is something that is so important.
Oh yeah. 어디 땡가라도 메시나 삼루동에 뺏게심보라 근데 남주 야वर 무치 송구도 송주나데 장주 셈다 동반이 니 공부 시스타바 송구도 어디 땡가라도 장주 셈데 삼바 상부들에도 셴뱅이 삼루바 이게 되고 단다 사고 말에 근시도 동반이 세야 되고 되고 짜와네 빠에 너무 짜와네 빠야 돼 동반이 또 걸로 들에도 તે તોંબની તો ભલે કોતે તાંતને મગજ શેર કાંગ લેબકી રવા તું શેર કરે ચાંજુ સેમદે ને બચાવું તો તે ngara samlena tende samgra મેસે થોંદો ચિરે તાંદંગા કપતો દે ચિરે સમજે થમજે કે ટ્રુપ થંગે સાજે કોવાન ચિરે થોબા શોસે તવાસે ચિલા માતો ચિ મલમ દે ચિ દેબા માતો samlo ખોરતો ગયો મારવા ઓ તી કે કરે સે મેસે થોંદો તેલે તાંદા ચે કો ના દે શાગદો તી મારવા 아주 껴와네 껴와 거저기네 뒤주 좋아요 말은 아주 껴와대 껴와 표현으로 마도 샘대다 봐서 내버디야 기대기 내버디 기체로 되라 그 껴만 못해라 다음에 봐도 윤체요 말은 알아서 가서 미소 붙이는 밀레시도로 마도 심지어 고라 매버셔요 말아 그래서 타르 무상로 땅고라 미 장세 까담벨라무 송도와 미 장세에서 땅을 무상로 땅하세 제 망부여라 뒤주 망부여라 가죠 가디 있는 지금 삼사 삼고라 마음번에 껴안에 껴안 밀을랑지 셴백이 삼로 슈치르 슈치제 연대 장네 그것에 연대 군대 심젤에 개발해봐 대한민국 통계 증개봐도 저기 인삼 근데 일이 매진날 껴나리 방법이나 뒤줄에 교지 삼사 연대 나리 개변나 산제지 고반 토베 교지 삼삼배나 에 네버 첨부 산제지 가서 최군적의 시축봐 산제지 시축봐서 찍받은 맛은 야기하기여라 근데 제 배적으로 마도 남사 쩨마 많이 버치 남사 술에 끼고 말와 아주 샘 쪄제 좋아 이거 전부 삼로다 사제 고바 토바 책임 삼사다 근데 로비아 가래 있는 뜻을 럽기 해삼 단들 럽토기 말와 이 배치나 용도 안 가라서 해주셈 저기 지당은 이제 대시기 전주 돈에 깨받아서 내매 사제 쓰고 전주 쳐도 샘 깨받나 신경 샘 깨기 시작라 지당의 대지 저도 전주 샘벨라발라 르바신도 라버자스게 마도 전주 샘벨라바 강게 단다라 럽기 해서 럽토기 요 말어 전에도 고하랬대 그래서 르바신도 럽게시도 뜻이 망보시하는 게 등에 봐도 지금 타도 매일 샤고라 대샤는 샘 깨토그래도 쩨마시 깨토그래 아니 갈갈이 쩨마 많이 봐 딱바르시 나가슈기 삼로 공개 정소나 전주 샘 쩨마 많이 봐서고라 단단 아주 쩨고라 우주견의 바삼으로 따네 심지 탐제도 사제 고바 토바 적인사 마오바나 끼와 같이 고나 밀류랑 침바치든 서바소 이 야게 땅긴 삼사 삼로야 고르고라 이 삼로 코네 소수 셈비텐도 내가 레그라 텐데시도 코티 인지미지 삼다오라 전주기 셈세 어야 어디도 티야 뭐 준줄레 티워데 송고도 기대참면은 여기게 저런데 기타 참은 문화대로 로직이 ram나때 뭐한테 이 산제도 결함나 지대수 남로도 tan가죠. 대대 개와 냠조 니라 따스도. 대대게 대답을 말아서 개와 냠춘죠. 이거 똑치 못해 데리아 내배 뜨겁 내라 송거라. 대대 개와 냠조 니라 따. 이거 똑치 신도 메세바 예배 겁 내라 송거라. 대대 개와 냠조 니라 따 대보 똑치 신 얘네 쪽배 전주세 멤버 계셔 관계 세균 버줘서 그것에 연대 군대지 산제 있고바 토고되베 딱배 현집에 전주그 셈마도 여와 현다 관계 세균은 토고 말해서 그도와 현라 너버체네 디버사게도 현라 펜베 셈 초도 교버티 창게나 디버 관계 따그리에서 텔레 셈베 아니 디버다에 탑시 현다 요마서도 개치시도 되라 어디인데 내가 비티버 마사야 균제야 로 나르사바에 다르고라 요랍침부 셴벤 삼루랍침부 담베네 나르사베 틱바투 sabru 친요르시 데부 뇽메고 바차도요라 가셔 데부 뇽고나 데부 침부 뇽고야데 춘주 뇽마도 뇽메고 바차도요라 나르사게 틱바타 신제 균제야 치도 장주 셈데 거래서 오라 동방에 떠바데 틱바 자원에 봐 본시들라 동방에 떠고데 선거를 단덕급 들이야 제제소 말에 단덕디 팽에 꾸주 장주기 셈지 소시거라 되는데 다단당한 저 대대개와 냠주 일라도 대버도 신도 메세바 근데 속배 장주 셈에바 계시간게 시긴 넘버는 요로세 개와 신다 간게 시긴에 도 말에 셴뱅게 삼로 딱배 신집에 장주기 셈 로아 내 단당하라서 신라 펜스 잠바 자와 펜베셈마도 내가 메세바 근데 셈티 장게네 데 디버타에다 너 마음반을 사제 고마토야 타르와 토야를 소고 파샤샤여도 이 예린 메시나를 삼다 그래서 것도 어야 되질라나
So here, this is really important that we think about in our daily lives. As His Holiness always stresses, these attitudes of bodhicitta and emptiness. This is really what we are trying to cultivate, this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, this kind, loving, beneficial attitude toward others, and emptiness, which is the wisdom that is able to really remove all of the faults from their root. So here, the teachings that we're giving are primarily on the view view of emptiness. But of course, we need both bodhicitta and emptiness in order to be able to get to the state of Buddhahood. But we might think like, wow, my life is so short. How am I possibly going to be able to do all of this within a single lifetime? There's no way that I can get to this state of Buddhahood. And this is really because we're thinking about it wrong. We need to have this long reaching kind of view, this vast, expansive sort of intention. That this sort of lifetime that we have right now is just a small moment. We are going to we have in the past taken life after life, and we are going to continue to take rebirth after rebirth. There's no end to the continuum of a sentient being. So we need to think long term. We need to think that this is our ultimate goal, to become a fully enlightened Buddha who has removed all qualities and developed all, or removed all faults and developed all good qualities. But we are going to think that I need to take good rebirth after good rebirth. I need to get a kind of human life in order to be able to progress along this path and develop each of these qualities, remove each of these various faults in order to eventually be able to get to that state of Buddhahood. So this is like creating the foundation, building the foundation that will lead to Buddhahood. It's not as though we can immediately have an unfabricated kind of attitude of bodhicitta, this genuine altruistic desire to benefit others, but rather this is something that we have to train in, we have to develop in stages. So as we say, just as the Tathagatas of the past generated this supreme attitude of bodhicitta and in stages trained, so too I will follow that by training in stages. It's not that we immediately get to have all of these qualities and have all of these realizations, but rather we set this kind of long-term goal and make effort over a long time, which will eventually bear fruit. The Kadampa masters often speak about having this long-term kind of vision, that we're not thinking about something to just immediately get, but rather if by thinking in this way, we will eventually be able to reach that goal. We will eventually get there. And returning to this verse, again, virtue is perpetually ever so feeble, while the power of vice is great and extremely dreadful. So our virtues are very weak and our non-virtue is so strong. But really, we have the ability to eventually reverse that kind of state by over time training. We can't and as it continues, it says, if there were no spirit of perfect awakening, what other virtue would overcome it? So again, all of these negativities that we have accumulated in relation to other beings, really the strongest, most powerful method to eliminate those is this attitude of bodhicitta. It is the most powerful in terms of cutting the continuum of our engaging in non-virtue and making lighter and lighter those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past, such that maybe the ripening result will be lesser, won't be quite as heavy. And so this attitude of bodhicitta helps us to remove our kind of harming others and the harms that we have done them in the past. And it is the view of emptiness that eventually removes from the root all of our faults. But this is, again, we need to set this kind of long-term goal. We are training in stages. And initially we have to have a kind of fabricated sense of bodhicitta, of wishing to become a fully enlightened Buddha for the benefit of others. But eventually this is something that will arise naturally, but we need to recognize that our view needs to be quite long.
Oh yeah. Oh, that ko tuition na tiri to. Tuition na su tuition na. Ni na doing some good wa. Oh, shan la chawa bang ba da. Ale ya bi su. Sure. Ya wuce dan bu ci jama. Marin da ya wuce jama. Ano ti ma shi sa do. Yeah. Oh, that shan la chawa bang ba da pemba tu ba ni na do be che ra. Shan le ha. Ne ba che na chawa che na. Ni shan la tung yong gre sam. So so ne ba che na so so tung yong do. Ina shan la ne ba che na shan la tung yong gre sam. Ri ma re sam go do. Shan la tung me go re, de wa yo go re ran da chi ba re sam ne. Ni shan la chawa bang ba se de go do. Shan la pemba tu ba. Ni ni na do do re. Chawa bang ya de wa chamba da chawa da. Dang nyum se de shan la pemba tu ye sam da go do. Oh, Jiangsu sim se de shan la pemba tu go do. 동반이 또 두자 공동아 제 차도 드레스 강가 시에 돈달이야 동반이 공교하라 가서 다음에 공교하라 샬레 펜버트베 줄을 두고하라 근데 람 공마 토베 사마 샬레 펜버트베 돈다 두고하라 띵이나 뒤로래 띵이데 야체로 체로 당고라 이등아라줄레 시축서데 샬레 네바파 동해 용그레 삼네 네바파 샬레 동해 용네 디마르 샬레 대와촌에 라데 치바레사 삼다 어조데 사토나 신시 소소를 지리 개침부 시부치 네바치에 용메쇼베 야와 강가 용공게 어조데 사토 소르치 나와메 게치 요하랑아지 삼로 이메베 소고요라 어조데 대완들레 동해 멘도바레사 소아디두 용게레 삼사 삼로 코르네 네바치는 디마레 삼사 삼로 코고요라 어조데 샬레 차와 방바다 햄버트바니 나레 데베인세 어디둥아라조 메시 예리 메시나랴 샬레 찌네기 차와방기 인사 햄버트기 인사 티 야체로 체로 따네 니 펜발이야 펜버 야치 좀 방부여라 차와방벌 차와네 빠야베 텐도 빠야티니 야체로 들어요도 이바도네 산제 고바트 베르도 나던데 드레 삼로 따니로와 얘네 심지어 탐제기 더 중통계기 껴그세 연대 군대기 기부시도 버 그러자기 삼 대체도 된 유지기 추 산제 남게 냠용의 송바 추데 녀텔 터바체 소소 터바체 튀중기 과라바체 알레 틴데 송구도 틴데 도아삼 대체를 삼중 대삼 마샤스 남바 산제 벌레 터바다 삼바 콤바 숨요라 터바 장장한데 되게 아마래 터차소나 소소 삼으로 땅고래 소소 삼으로 땅나 소소 시럽디야 페게르와 산제가 소다 갤론다감 깨남제 세제타웨 서신도 렉바타랑아에 칼라워세 쿠치메세 산제를 구버체베세 강가송데 인데 유지레 삼마삼소고라 이 팽기마로 소소 시럽 페게마로와 소소 시럽 페게는 소소 삼으로 땅 어디 레샤 레멘두세지 소소게 삼으로 땅에 삼으로 코르토바지 소고로와 임바 맨로 텐데 송샤 인기레 세서도 샤샤나 니바 요마르와 소소 카데 이나사 나라줄레 시럽 요라 시럽 장바치기네 고 야부시에 통계게 시럽 요래 시바데 삐다부 요래 어디인데 페이지 당시나 야리아 두그와 이랑 주제 도가시 세데 샤샤나 도르도르와 어디인데 가서라 삼중기 고아식도 이나 메나사 소소 딱제시 셴바자 어디 오네 레샤사 네바니바치세 레샤 삼자 소소응원에 띵운에 레샤 덴바 레샤 삼자 삼로 코르토바치코라 셰그도 송그도 인게레 삼삼 멤버치코라 삼중기 고아시고라 열레테네 등운에 콘르디 껴쳔부레도아 차도데 껴쳔부레도아 나게데 껴쳔부레도아 샬라츠와체데 껴쳔부레도아 사하고아치부 딩마라 나데 소소 냠솔랑고라 이건 로그로아 근데 제우레 송거라 곰지체네 남산대 하고와 삼지 매가 처음 말와 니마샤라나시 멤버간가 남산 로토에시 요 말와 또 토마 매바나 가좀 미게 올 꼼데요라 어디인데 티고 칼리칼리 리베리베파 세고요라도 딘데 삼루다지 테바다 삼바 꼼바체네 껴그세 연대 군대지 심지어 탐제를 니리 매바 타심버 통경게 산제제 고반 토버샤 대체도 아니죠 남배출이야 터바다 삼바고 베름지 주빈 삼 군로세 때문에 삼바쇼소야 아딘데 만도체소
So here, if we really summarize the Dharma, it can be subsumed into these two things of non-harm and benefiting others as much as we can. And really, this attitude of not harming others should be based upon an understanding that others experience suffering. When someone harms us, does something to us, we experience suffering. And based upon that kind of knowledge, we should see that others are just the same, rather than seeing them as like something inanimate, like rocks or stones or something that don't have any kind of feeling. We should recognize that, well, what is harmful to me, what hurts me, that is also the experience of others. And based upon that, we then develop a kind of love and compassion toward others sentient beings, those sorts of attitudes of wanting to benefit them and not cause them any sort of harm. Even the development of our understanding of emptiness is really to benefit others. It is through this that we are able to eliminate our attitudes of hatred and anger and desire from their root and attain these higher paths that eventually allow us to become a Buddha. So the real foundation for developing, getting to the state of Buddhahood is the foundation of non-harm and creating benefit to others. Normally we see ourselves as so important, like any little thing that causes us suffering, we don't want that. We want everything that will bring us happiness. And we kind of look at others as if they didn't have any sort of feelings or experience anything. But we should come to see that they are just like us. And therefore, on a day-to-day basis, we should really try to benefit others as much as we can and refrain from any kind of harm to them. And then we expand that more and more. We try to benefit them in greater and greater ways. We reduce the kind of harm that we cause to others until we removed it completely from the root. And we become the kind of being that is able to fully benefit other sentient beings, having removed all faults and developed all qualities. And so we should set a kind of attitude thinking that I'm going to listen to these teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha gave these teachings based upon his own experience. And based upon hearing these, I'm then going to really contemplate them for myself and meditate on them. As the Buddha, and we often hear quoted, the Buddha said that we shouldn't just accept his words out of having respect, but rather we should examine them as we would like gold and see, is this how it is or is it not like this? And so it's no benefit to us to just sort of hear the teachings and say, oh yeah, that's how it is, that's how it is. It doesn't develop our wisdom in any way. We are listening to the teachings in order to develop our own wisdom. And we have that kind of seed. We have the ability to develop our wisdom, but it involves thinking about things, really contemplating. We can do this for good and for bad. But when we hear the teachings, we should think about it for ourselves. Is this really how it is? Does this accord with reason? And based upon having gained an ascertainment and understanding through investigation and contemplation, we can then really engage in practice. So once we see, oh yes, anger is really faulty, pride is really bad, our desire is really harmful, that alone, that kind of understanding alone is not sufficient. We then have to actually take that up into practice. And so it's not as though this can happen immediately, sort of like the sun dispelling darkness and all of our faults are gone, but rather it is something that we develop over time. And so in order to be able to attain that state of Buddhahood, the state in which one has removed all faults, developed all good qualities, and benefits others without any sense of partiality, closer distance, one is we should set this kind of intention, thinking we're listening to these teachings for that purpose, for eventually being able to benefit other beings most fully by attaining the state of Buddhahood.
Oh yeah, that is so. Tangan zu dele te ba. Tenjin driver joa said. Ati karso da. Salu jang ben dole training nga zu ngwe ba. Lo das. Tangan zu de salu jang ben de shekan ne yo ko ra. Salu sanje ge shinge thale salu jang ban de ge shingo ting ting yo sa chi le signe. Ne su ke sombare do. Yolanda su tenjin driver joa to ate chö thongo se. Su chö thongo ate sanje thongo so go ra. Oti ma do ke ma song che ne churu ba. Tin de she de lo wo ne. Ki ka su re jare si da ke cho te le che yong do. O che. Tin de ko ten de nang ba che ne pe ke che mu chi yo ra. Tenjin driver joa su de. Ju ta ke ju su de ne len gi ju de ra khoran gyurje gi ju chi ko ra. Tenji chi gen su de ro ba chen gen ge. Ya ne len de re rong ge gi ju de. Debuti rebalia, roba chinge che chiudo solo legge ci gesso, chiuda che si va. E la sabbia di yugnelere va. Tipa giorni, yugon buciagora. No tilia sada, chiuda, luda, tutto, gensene, con sabbia di yure chugura. O ticene, yugon butendici a che un butua. Chiuda gengi. Di yöna di Jones do asaje. Di yöna di Jones. Jutan ken di yöna, rebu di jongu de echer. Jutan ken di masona, 제부터 요요 말에 송거라. 근데 그다 깨서나 제부터 깨나 삼나 마기나 삼나 깨요 그래. 그다 깨데 마찬에 제부터 깨나 삼나 깨요 말에세. 이소가다 지대기 제바보 위원회 꿀롱기 와기로와 요아메바 꿀롱기 와 디코레 딜레 디코르 산치댕이 제바보치 위원회 이게 삼루 따네네 간데 고위다 티네시 카셸 요한주 카셸 메브세 인데 소야 요 말에세 소소소 주단 깨요아레 티사소나 현다 가르삼마사 뛰고 말에 레부라메바 깨요 그래서 거라 그게 마찬가지 깨요 말에세 근데 교단 깬 경우가 깨운데 그 레부대 라와체 수께 그요 말에 교단 깬 손도 코코라 라와메바 수레 동게시레 마토치기 그 랑신기 수 라와체는 코라 수께 연게 뭐뭐 코라 사고네야 라와르치 수쳐야지 요 말아 신도레지네 그 레부 걸걸 메토샤인 때네 신도 수께운데 유진 상선은 그 신도 중중제 처르처 로도 아마도 코라 라와체는 수쳐야 그요 말아 그래서 남바에는 땡진 레버런 중앙에 야구 삼을 땅에는 그다 깨겨한 건 유로체제 그 유로 내급을 소통 거라. 이인데 그 라완도 주여시와 말해. 유두 그다 깨라 떠진 데는 그런 왕매도 왕매서 오라다. 그런 데 용구를 마도 그 그런 거는 라완을 제 소통해 그요 말해. 어디나 신가라도 서부체 땡게리 치나 그다 깨만 보지 소리야 손지 대고를 마도 nga sumpuchi te sam rawa roche kashi niwa yondore samgudu abe keyo mara kudan kenji mandina tozu mandina utanda nala tozu mandina namsa nagidu shigdu se lepsara nga zude samlu kugu mara tabura shoche nga siru rawa roche sogo pasha sem pasha tanda chi nga chi yona shagdo ti yo mare songu ware kumbu le tension delne ne pa le tagi ware 중에 대해서 준비는 그 중화다 tin데 망보실 뜻인 되네 강사차체 대고로 미차체 대고로 선부체 대고로 마도 라와체는 그 선부체 대고면도 나데 라와체 요요 말에서 풍부가라 때네 딱 봤삼래야 타녀지 왕게 샤과래 때네 딱 봤삼라 근데 속불래가 저스나 내가 지금서 셈게 내가 지금도 셈 콘도세데 기분도 기분면도 세라 나drugi 대구세 샤고도 류다 셈기 자파샤 코라 레가싱게 셴다 수요 마라 이는 가라서 연나로 샤고도 땡에 소고래 땡에 소라래 괜찮게 삼기에세 삼겐데 그 소불에 로스 미 여기서는 소불에 로스 나치 용마라 소소 미르바탄다 소불 만드니 미치 요아요 마라 어디인데 그 땡진 레버리 좋아해나 라완도 사시와라 어디인데 땡진 레버리 좋아한 디요나 디쇼 규진 소본 디요나 아닌 레버디 깨온 거래서 일야 생기 깨나 삼삼 매기나 삼삼 제바부 셴다게 원주체요 말이 깨인 디바점 지지 그래 직대나 작배 무슨도 작배 규단 깨 가르쳐내 끼도 디쌈지레 마도 다 디잡리아 지지 깨 송게 치다 디고고도 디고고면도 송게 치 삼을다네 요 말에 송게 와라 이 요아메베 깨라테네 좋아서 그래 꾸노게 요아메 바스 디요나데 디케베신 디케시데 미다가 도메케레 좋아서 그래 규단 깨 코라 깨 그래 규단 깨 코라 깨네 그 유로체네 제부데 깨 오르마도 셴다 셰바나시 규딱바치샤 당부 규데 딱바치샤 근데 되게 준비하고 있어. 대용해요 말 남버잖아. 고조가래 규치 당부 규데 딱바 마샤네 대담말에 치고 대담말 치고 대담말 치고 두가 매는 되요 말에. 남바에네 통미래. 규 통미래 규된 통미래 가서 통미 땡게만 요래 당부 디네 중 디탈요 말에 세치요 말이야. 근데 그 미다 발장장 규를 때네 그 규제도 쓰는 거 알아. 딱바지 샤네 텔레 규요 말에서 직샤 통마치샤 디탈까요 말 따뜻하게 좀 된대요 말. 전부는 니를 차시는 그 사도 중에 돼요 알아. 지단 감을 통마요 말. 이걸 통마요 말. 어디인데 미다바 또 매견을 때네 좋아스. 딱바라와 지게 주단 깽게 요요 말 다승도 미다바 또 매견을 좋아스. 얘는 디기면 되게 Kandi marik be kenjin duji yesde. Ya judan kentela timu mayin ba debude kewe neba yonge chikwa mato. Judan ken yinze sangma shingdo karsere kushu sabyo chitamne shenda shingdo chikte yongu marwa. Kura timu mayin be neba yonge kyuchele tene debude kewe res. Nebe kenla tene chunga se ken sumle chunga chi shegu ware. Ye kanliya ane ken nga chi solu chambe to ine yunga tene chunga sengi chi. Tenchi debar juwe chengi nga de. 이 가르스네 다 당부들 규단 제발에 중에 챙기스 지시하래. 탐 주자들이야 아니 가르 당부 매백결에 중앙스. 다음에 백결에 중앙스 그래. 야 당부 매백결에 중앙스네 되거래. 당부스도 강가 송경게 왕자 용조 연계식의 서제 예견기 중앙에서 근데 요 말에서 팀무 많이 배 규단 낀데 속선에 깨운 걸 봐도 요때 깬 시다 깬 숨다 깬 알레 중앙에 tenchi debar chunga sungkudwa. Tende samla taayina, tende chishin jok sheba de, nangbala sanjel mato je shenda katene, tenchi debar chunga de yapu chiru pato jok shingi maare se. Nga mawa nangba sanje bina kanga ke tenchi debar chunga de yapu shanshiki wa maare se, sunga di tirwa. Tenchi debar chunga la rangwa ne truba yung maare, rangwa we temba truba de yung maare se. Nangba sanje bale ngubu temba truba ke lenge yora, o tezu amandri wade songu wara. O teji robs lamna. Ne wane mashira lamma wache.
Okay, so here what we are talking about is dependent origination. And this, again, in the Rice Seedling Sutra here, the Buddha, based upon seeing a sprout and gives this kind of discourse, and really at the beginning, it says then, so the Blessed One, after seeing this rice seedling, spoke these words to the monks. Monks, he who sees dependent arising sees the Dharma. He who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. And so then we go into this sort of back and forth between these venerable, or these various bodhisattvas. But here, this understanding of dependent origination implies that all is dependent upon causes and conditions, in the sense that those composite phenomena depend upon a substantial cause and coordinating conditions. Like in the case of a rice sprout, a rice seedling, this is something where you have the rice seed is the substantial cause, but you need to have all of the kind of coordinating conditions in order to actually bring about the fruition of or the coming about of that sprout. And so here, it again, following in the sutra, it says that because this exists, this occurs. Because this arose, this arises. This is called dependent arising. So here, this refutes the idea that, say, all phenomena are sort of created due to the thoughts of a divine creator, for example. When we see like a sprout come about, it's not as though it does so through the power of a divine creator's thoughts or something, but rather it arises due to various multiple causes and conditions. It's not as though that seed has the kind of a power to bring about its result with kind of autonomously, without depending upon anything else. Nor is that effect something that is independent, autonomous. It wasn't developed like, sort of by its own nature, but rather it depended upon many causes and conditions in order to bring that about. So if you have like a tree, it's not as though the tree by itself develops fruit and flowers, but rather there are many causes and conditions that lead to this tree growing and getting bigger and eventually producing fruit. And so this kind of transformation, looking at the way in which things transform and are dependently originated, we see that they do so without any sort of autonomy. Like we often feel while we are alive that we are sort of like, we have this autonomy, we're here, we have this kind of independence. But there are actually so many causes and conditions that are necessary for us to be alive. One little cause or condition goes wrong and all of a sudden we're sick or we're dying. And so we have this sense of like an I, as if there were an I somehow in control of these aggregates, or like separate from the aggregates. If I set aside my form and my feelings and my consciousness and so forth, there would be some sort of I there. But really, we can't talk about the I independent of those various, I mean, the collection of the elements and the collection of our aggregates. It's something that is merely designated dependent upon those aggregates. We can't say like that I do anything independent of the body or mind. Like we say, I go when the body goes somewhere, or I am angry when our mind is experiencing some kind of anger. We can't speak of an I independent apart from all of those aggregates. If there were something like it is not possible for there to be something totally unconnected from those aggregates that is this I, even though we have a sense of there being such an I. And so this kind of autonomous, independent existence, we grasp at that, but really when we examine dependent origination, we see that that is not the case. And so the defining characteristics of dependent origination as they come through in this text of the Rice Seedling Sutra is first that the phenomena are produced from causes that are not a divine creator's thoughts. It's not as though a divine creator just makes everything due to their thoughts, nor is it the case that there's some sort of a permanent cause. This really creates all kinds of problems to think that there's something permanent. We fall into a kind of issue of, well, when was the start of that, or was there any sort of start? Now, here the in according to the Buddhists, they would say that there is things come about due to not the thoughts of a creator, but rather due to causes and conditions as they are renowned within the world. And so this means that they need to be multiple and impermanent causes. Now, when we talk about the sort of, can we posit some kind of a beginning, although we can say that there's like a beginning to this particular world, we can't point to the beginning of the universe as such. There's no way to trace the beginning of these multiple impermanent causes. But here, when it comes to production in terms of dependent origination, all things are produced from multiple and impermanent causes. And they're also produced from causes that have the capacity to give rise to a particular effect. It needs to be something that actually is a sort of uncommon, has the uncommon capacity to do that. And then this also, there are either sort of 3 defining characteristics or 5. Phenomena are also produced from existing causes and selfless causes. So here, when it comes to this understanding of dependent origination, this is unique to the Buddha in the sense that no non-Buddhists understand this dependent origination correctly. But even some of the kind of essentialist schools of the Buddhists have a sort of wrong understanding in the sense of they think that there is some kind of autonomous nature or something that exists that is really truly existent from its own side. And this is really refuted by a correct understanding of dependent origination.
Oh yeah. Anga ju de lo shena. Ande range samdune se dole se to wa. Ade so su tinge ga samdu samlu na shi chena de samgu to se ra. Oh, bitaba to me ken da se. Yo a me be ken da, ne be ken je ken sum da, ken sum le chong wa de. Den jin de bar jo wa chen ni sum den se ra. Yang nga le ki wa se da gulab sai ba. Gyudan cheba dan tabo mebe kyali chwas. Tingi kyamnani sumga nga re dora. Nga le kyewa de duje ki chenyi de sumbes. Duje chenyi sidu. Chenyi chenjunu che kyaba kuje se chenyi bachi se tisi yomara. Chenyi tedan denba ko ure se are se. Duje tamche jigbe chenyi che re se ane sho. Tende chi changu ure se. Chenyi de sumba dan dole se. Gyudan kien la tenjin drebaran chungwa seti udo. Gyudan kien la tenjin, tedan drel ne, gyudin gyurgi chechen, tedan drel ne drebudi yongo ra, gyuro chen. Mada gyudi chi gyunche pacho pepe loga te, nyelendi yang drebu shenda chi tabja kuja ya kiya yoma ra. Gyudan kien dan drel ne, gyujengi gyurdo ge wangen drebudi teta gyun tuni, nyelendi teta tuni eni yongo re sungo ra, tenjin drebaran chungwa se. Tin dushe tin diswa. Tin nambaya, tene takbe tin dis. Ana kora ngo te kandiris ne, taan rabachine, sobo, sem, sora, dushe, ngaranzulu yebe pungbunga sigra namgyu. Pungbunga la tene, ene taase. Rashi, tundu, kar sigina, teta tisi mingriri taasha yorwa. Dakshi ta chashe la tene, takbe tin disi yorwa. ngarazo 풍부가부 가루라 때네 딱배 기부세도 풍부가 소보다 샘다 소한 두시 지여서 아니 미래되어라 미타기와래 아니 다시레 루레스 소스민가르네 티파타기도 풍부가부 가루라 직차는 디지지레스 현달의 문제 가가 체였던 달과 따기와래 타녀 봐서라 타녀 라이 타녀 로이 타녀 현달의 가가 소소소 신이었던다. 칸데치 람나 구주였던다야. 지den게 타녀에서 추키쇼서 담보 민데 매네 하고 말와 민데 소여서도자 민기 타녀도 소라데 추스지게 추슬라빈지라 그거잖아. 지게 출라니 추세데 따서라. 다 추슬랍셔는 그 렌시어들 거도도. 어때고 타녀에서 자에 타녀다 또베 타녀에서 니와라. 자도게 타녀. 풍부가부 가루를 때네 디 미래 디 딸에 디 발라레 디 길이 세르다그라 밀레야 풍부가부 가루를 때네 디 트시르 디 튼두레스 파타그도 때네 딱베테 데시오라 풍부가부 가루를 때네 파타기오라 개점을 샤고로 마도 디 따에 튼다 가르스 비게치 제가 로는 라에 찌라야 요 말에 이 요는 랑은에 두버세레 라와에 껴와지 요나 타녀 샤고 말에 고난 데레스 질 반주고 주세요 거라 이거 말은 뭐 강가라 강바르지네 강배 찍바다 도다지 레레레레제 주세요 말아 권도지 데 강바레 강배나 밑에서 다가 드버치야래 지den게 타녀 고란 차샤고 말도 이거 그래 강바 그래서네 지den게 타녀 단 밑에서 바탄다 믿으시라 고라 강배나 된단다 강바 그래서 되시라 지den게 타녀를 녀해요 마다가 차샤로 강바나 때요 나던데 때 자게 예점게 첨부 예점게 쭉 줘봐래 자 때네 딱배 된데서 지den게 타녀 여왕의 샤배 어디인데 대시거라 지들 양라 촌남라 때네 신대 줘봐다 돌레스 된 도이시라 이 빨리 나래 와라 빨리 나다 그래서 니가 나게 와라 빨리 나래 되래 니 땅마데 쇼로 같이 와라 아지 자와 뒤지 심사 알아서 나 생계지 풍불로 왕주 생계를 저 라와치 여 삼기도 와 어디요 말을 뒤지 심래 숨거라 내가 생계 심래 나스도 라와를 십지여서 내가에서 라와 십지 내가 조서지 내 건조세 내 따다니다 가가 던다 매번 욕다 마음부 속으라 나 라와 지켜요 말해서 거라 다지 저와 뒤지 심견에 따지와 됐어 풍부나리아 라와에 다지 현다지 여 삼사데 뒤지 심리 내가 깨게래서 거라 견에 따 누지 풍부인데 동데서 풍부가와 되나 라와에 다디요 말에 동바리 다서 기란 삼반나시 나 삼자 라와지 요바 삼반나시 템바리요 말에 다서 템바 말에서 나라주 통주 나주데 템바 말에서 거라 다지 저와 뒤지 심견에 따지와 두치 풍부 디동데 딜레심제 요 마이스 두치 풍부 디 풍부가와 나라 다서 라와지 요 말에 다서 거라 두치 풍부 디동데서 딜레심제 요 마이스 심제다 트시다 tundu다 나다 지지 그래서 가가 요 말에서 나 가래서도 때네 딱 봐서면 샤고래서 거라 요 아마데 지다를 양라 초남라 때네 신대 죄바다 디신 풍부남 때네 군주 숨제 셔자오세 때자로와 예매네 신다스도 같이 들에 다 등산다 남주다 컴퓨터다 저수 샤나네 막부도와 남주레샤는 잘라 가지 요시다로 다다치 콜라담메다 레가지 마부요라 계속라 떼진 데네 남루스 바타 버테samle 남부 샤워마도 실로 박바테 마레 치사가 돈에 라오에 남루치 요 마라 남루 디레체 라오도 야페 대신게 치 주주세치 요 마라 콜로요레 박바요레 드니 야자 요로 마신 레가지 그 가자 이기래 네 땅게 미지에 요라 되게 주도 저라 야자 마다는 마밥시오라 내 남도 밥송서라 남도 밥에가 미치 밥밥기와라 이 맞아는 봐요 말아 라완도 전에 와지 요마 텐데 속발을 때네 내 마티시도 남도 레스 남도 밥송 남도 필소스 남루치 또서 마신실이 껴셔도 남루 껴셔셔서 마신디 남루게 말아 네 텔레테니고 딱바선자티 샤기도 나 매르베스네 매 말에 순거라 라왕한테 요 말에 때네 딱베 요레세 지들 양라 초 남라 때네 싱데 쳬바터 지들 양라 망보치 속발레 때네 남루스 파타기도 कंप्यूटर लेगा चेंगे माबो चुरा ते चले तेने कंप्यूटर स्पा तक दो रवा दो लेगा चेंगे चिक तिना ने चिक तो से के यो मारा तक से ना राय के यो मारा रवा तो टुबा चुने से ने ये यो गोरा तेने तक वाला से ने ये के यो मारे तेने तक बा सम तक दिसारे ताशिम के से के यो मारे जिते थाने यो वन तो शाबो ते सम चिम बचावरा जिबो शेवरे इसी तेरा के चोबरे रावण तो डुबाचे ने ता कागरे से चेना चिंदिरे शास जुजु से चियो बोरा ओ ते यो हमारे इना तेने ता पचम ले शा करे सुंगरा चिदर याला चो नमला साना ता से रावण दे मेना मेरे बेसो मे मार दासे चिदर याला चो नमला तेने शिंदे चुबा दा दिशिन फुंबु नम तेने कुजुप सिमजेन शे चाओ से तेने ता पचम ले शा करे से तेने तक बसमले चावा चितुगे वरे कांसा दिन रुगु वरे तेगी वरे तिग ले केवसा वरे तिग बसा वरे चावा चे बचंगी सवा शाखो रे सोरा सोबोगे लेगरे चेस न तादि चावा चिगी तो सर रा सिंबकी बाजे जो तादि की बुदु की बुदु से ते नाम शते समझि छिबरे तेने तक बसमले शाखो वरे छोतम ते वो ती सुंगरा वो ती जुला या ती जुना
So then picking up in the text, and this is on page 63. So here it says, my view is as follows. So the Rice Seedling Sutra cited earlier states that the definition of the dependent arising of composite phenomena is production from 5 or 3 conditions. So again, such as multiple and impermanent conditions, conditions that have a capacity for production and no production from a divine creator's will. Again, when it comes to composite phenomena, they are dependently originated in the sense of having this kind of definition, or they have these characteristics, not that they are inherently existent, but having the characteristics of not being created by a divine creator's will, being created from multiple impermanent causes, being created from causes that have the capacity to generate such an effect, and existent causes and selfless causes. So here then, continuing with a quotation from a sutra, it says, just as one speaks of a chariot in dependence upon the collection of parts, so we use the convention living beings in dependence upon the aggregates. So here, we have a kind of like continuum of these aggregates and independence upon this collection of our form and feelings, consciousness, discrimination, compositional factors. We designate a person. So, and on the basis of, a collection of aggregates, we say, oh, that's Tashi, oh, that's Tundrup, whoever it may be. But when we search within those aggregates for the thing so designated, it can't be found. But yet within the world, we are able to like identify and differentiate things like, oh, this is a house, or oh, Tashi is at home, or whatever it may be, using these conventions. By using the kind of conventions, and when we talk about conventions, we can have those sorts of words, the sound, and then the thought that is able to identify and understand things within the world, like saying this is an ox, or this is a vase, or whatever it may be. But beyond things being merely dependently designated, if you try to search for the thing so designated, try to find that kind of essence, then you can't actually find it. So we need to be satisfied with just that level of dependent kind of existence. So there's no, if things existed autonomously or from their own side, had that kind of objective existence as that thing, we wouldn't need to designate, oh, this is a house. There wouldn't need to be that kind of the parts or the mental designation or the causality. It would just exist from its own side. But yet there is not that kind of existence. And even though that kind of autonomous existence is not logical, is not tenable, we can still say within the world, like, oh, I'm here, or or I'm within this house, I'm going this way. And that's the extent of existence. It's merely dependently designated, but everything functions within that. But when we think about the way in which we grasp at things as though they had some kind of autonomous, real existence, we hold this sense of an I, and then we have this sense of mine, and then it's like, oh, well, this is my side, oh, that's them, this is us, and so forth. And based upon those kinds of designations and holding to them so strongly, we get angry, we create all kinds of negative karma, and so forth. So there is no kind of autonomous existence, but merely something that is designated on the basis of, like, a person is designated on these 5 aggregates, like it says in this sutra verse. And this sutra here is available in both Pali and Sanskrit. And so when we talk about a chariot, and we could use more modern examples, this is designated in dependence upon a collection of parts. And so here, this is the level of dependent origination that really is applicable to all phenomenon, really what is unique to the Buddha's teachings. That, like, when we think about something like, we could use a modern example like a plane or a computer or something like that. These are merely designations that we put on a collection of parts that is not that thing. So we think of like a plane as something autonomous. Oh, that plane is flying, the plane is landing. But there's so many parts and components that are necessary for that. It needs to be someone flying that plane. The plane doesn't just do it by itself, but rather we think of things as though they existed from their own side autonomously, when really they are just designated, merely designated upon a collection of parts. And although we are negating there being some kind of autonomous existence, if we think, well, is that thing then totally non-existent? Is it just utterly non-existent? No, it's something that is merely designated. We need to be satisfied with that level of merely designated, that things can function, phenomena can function within that mere kind of designation. So when we here, again, as it says, just as one speaks of a chariot in dependence upon collections of parts, so we use the convention living beings in dependence upon the aggregate. So here, there is a conventional existence, but it is a dependent designation. There isn't something that exists independent of our mentally designating.
올라 언더스 고 전에 랑게 닥시다스 셰 랑게 닥시다스도 닥시스데 민다사게 당부 차례게 시초라 텔레 닥시스라 가사르 진의 통수는 단접시나 따에 소부 통수는 어디 따르셔서 발라르셔서 저시르셔 준루르셔 소부를 때는 망쳐 따으라가죠 고라에는 야 소화단 두시다가 지지기부도 메두스네 지지탱기도 지지세 그래서 소화도 시도줄 때는 따고 요르도 어디인데 랑게 닥시스 철시직 차네 아니 발로 따고로 봐 가게 통에면 남부 동부실이야 니치르 니마르스 따야요 말아 남부치 촬영에 시치워래 tel 때는 니치르스 따야 될 딱베 시스고라 딱치에서 근데 풍부가부터 닥시래 강사대 딱베 쳐래 tel 때는 딱베 쳐라 저시기 풍부가부터 저시기 닥시래 저시대 tel 때는 딱베 따야 되래 닥시단 도제를 때는 도제수도 자다 동베 탄행이더라 저시레스 맹대다 이치서 뒤저시오냐 베토바들이야 도제스라 자다 탄행이들은 도제스라 아니 도제 자도게 탄행을 때네 주베 텐데 송반남네세 단다 지대양라 소남라서 게되게 때네 딱베 닥실을 때네 딱베 텐데 송고도와 랑경오 때네 딱바 삼샤오레스 어때서 치루바샤기 말와 땅마들에 깨숨다 깨가래 좋아서 치루바샤고 말와 유단 깨 디버섬을 때네 좋아레스 샤고 말와 유단 깨 딜라 때네 좋아셔반 디잠비 좋아레스 샤고 말에 디잠마레 송게시와레 되게 삼르타니 디고기 삼마도 코나 때레토 마레스라 어디에디고 텐데 남샤티니가 때네 로아 부 가서 텐데 좀다 전ing아라 소바 셰테다 때네 딱베 딱실라 때네 딱베 텐데 어때서 치료바 샤식 말해서라 샤기요 말했다 때네 텐데 치료바 남비테 다르셰바다 때다네 텐데 마 마이에스 tendri mao, tezu tendri wandu chene tendri mao ma yinse. Tagase chiso la tenne kebare sene lava sambi tendri sigmarwa. Tenjen drelni se ko tendan tinglu chi tedan drelni kedan kilu ti chimachi shinshi shewara. Takpa la tenne kedan kilu ta tedan drelni yondan yolu sheyo mare. Nangpa chene rita. Takpa yene ko gyuro merwa. Gyuro mena ni drebu katu maji keba mewa chagara. Kena keji ba yin kore. Maji na namya maji kura. Teta ne tendre mawa ma yin te teta ki tukten jin jikten de se wara. Tungen tempe tupe ne lu longche la soba. Zamni de tabulu sha na tesu kanga se wara. Teta ne tukten jin jikten de nam rang da dangi chibe gyu. Rang da dangi chibe gyu takpa chile tene kikare se gara. Chiso se si nendra. Jikten ji cheba boy na takpa chige. Kulungi cheba le tene kikare se shegara mado. Midakwe kyu kyang le tene. Tanda nganzu ngu sumdu jikten di le tonde kyu da kenti chibu le tene kikare se marwa. Takwe kyu da takwe cheba boso shengi yana cheba bo shengi. Takwe cheba boso kyu loyo yowa. Loyo yowa sudo samlu tane. Didi kuma. Chungwa so tardu takwa chambe chikwe gyule kewara. Debe shirise. Takwa gyule kikare. Dikare chambe rese arwa. Tadar chana tenchen trebra chungwa maa deni chirube tumba la mebe rari tumba tube wambu kechu so sheba yang tetu os. Tendre samla tangi na. Ani tendre nyibu dirwa. Chiruba la soba tezu sheba mayimba nangba sangi ba tumba sangi chumdende chikwe sumbe kechu rese tendre shena rikdo sere. Ya, tipo tiki.
So here, the Buddha indicates that a dependent arising is established in dependence on its basis of imputation and the imputation of terms and concepts. So we have something that is like the basis of imputation or the basis of designation. Like say, when we're going to think horse, we see the form of a horse or an ox or a person. And sometimes it's not the form that we designate on, but say our feelings or our consciousness, and we think I in relation to that particular basis. But there is something that appears to us. It's not like there's just like empty space and we then have this thought or this imputation, but rather it is on independence upon that basis of imputation, having a particular basis, that we impute terms and concepts. We give a name to something or a thought to something. And so that is the kind of level of dependent origination that we're really talking about here. There is this kind of connection, dependence of the dependent, the thing that is designated, and that designating mind, the designating terms and concepts. And it is on this basis that the Buddha's teaching of dependent origination is really unique. Non-Buddhists do not know this meaning of dependent arising and are not proponents of it, for they assert that this world of true suffering is produced from a cause that is ultimately partless, permanent, and unitary, such as a permanent cause that has the same nature as its effect, or a cause that is the will of a permanent divine creator. So here, non-Buddhists don't even assert the kind of definitions of composite dependent origination, in the sense of they may assert some kind of a divine creator's will is the cause of the world, or something that is permanent, some sort of like a primary principle that acts as a permanent cause. Well, for Buddhists, to say something permanent is a cause is quite a logically fallible kind of a thing. It would either be producing its results all the time or never doing so. So refuting that, Buddhists again assert that there are those 3 or 5 types of dependent origination. But even beyond that, this perspective of the basis of imputation and the imputing terms and concepts, that kind of level of dependent origination, from that perspective, non-Buddhist teachers are not proponents of dependent arising. This is not what non-Buddhists certainly think or understand.
Oh yeah. I did. The Daria, don't go long 대다량 공부를 주긴 직대는 대버 때발레스. 그래서 직대는 대버 산je 좀 되တယ်대버 쇼라 공부를 주. 어디나리아 가르송도스는 동해랑게 제바다스. 동해 템베 뒤에 뉴주기 직대디 송거라. 내려 론줄라 소반데서 사마서 거라. 동해랑게 제바다스. 네 라다 당이 찍바게 귤했는데 제바레스. 교단 제부 당이 찍바 샤기 와라. 나발에네 교단 제부 당이 찍바 지와 말에 교단 제부 뭐 타대 연구라베. 동해랑게 당이 찍바 귤했는데 제바레스. 현재 제당하스 라다 당이 타대베 그 랑문에 주베 교시한을 때네 제바레스. 근데 동해랑게 제바다 현재 제당하스들 공부를 중인구도 여기 개발 망치하게 현재 제수랑래 못하대바 현재 줄랬더니 제바티 장절 샤그라 제송가 버때서나 랑은데 주베 교시한을 때네 제부시한게 버때래 현재 시그마도 교시한을 때네 제부시한게 버때래 현재 시그마레 이 가게 말에 송거라 현다 개발전에 현래 껴와 가그를 랑래 껴와 가그를 껴와 가고래 수대를 저러서 탐제 가고래 해서 근데 소주제 요라 내 탐제 가는 그 말에 껴와 가야 말 랑은에 주베 껴와 가고래 마도 껴와 가야 말에 랑은에 주베 다 가르 마도 다 요래 과 면에 심제에 다들 그래 근데 송주면 장이 용도 현재 제당하세 이게 제수 다기된 현재 이것에 지르고 발라서 버텨줘요. 다들 다기대 내년에 때는 좋아서 다기세 현재 시기를 때는 좋아서 현재 시험마도 지속해서 당이 식버들도 시행요 말이야. 금이반에 떡에 되어서 금이반 되게 네 장비 봐라. 그거 말해서 당부랑 신기 좋아해서 어디시그럼 금이반에 떡에 되어서 그게 때는 종을 쏘세. 그래서 산재가 때는 종한테 대전을 마두베 소리 속도 다지 현재 네가 금일에 껴 여기 그래서 건져 산재가 때 속도 말에 때는 종아 송바래 해서도 현재도 유시할 때는 껴 잡는 샤는 마두베서 대서 상망에 랑은에 주바 켈레기도 템바 주바 켈레기도 동해 랑게 제바서 템바 주바 켈레서 지 따든 세네 니네네 데레 켈레기 와라 랑게 제바레세 현재 제바레세 랑은에 주베 유시할 때는 제바레세라 니게 제바레세 때 따든 세네 샹게 셰지르 되어라 유미반에 떡이 되어세 그게 때는 종아를 쏘서 산재게 때는 종아를 때진 데버를 종아를 그다 깨를 때진 데버를 종아를 다시단 도시라 때진 데네 종아를 에세 때네 딱 봤으면 종아를 쏘래 때진 데버를 종아가 이니 켜게 똥버시스 때진 데버를 종아데 랑와도 주바 랑원에 주바 랑경어 주베 똥버레스 대시버레스 이니 켜게 똥버시스 랑원에 주바 랑와도 주바 랑시게 주바 랑경어 주바 샹라 라말레 바주바세 어때서래 이니 켜게 똥버시스 뭐뭐 랑와 유메시 냐메 켜게 생게데스 근데 뭐뭐 컨디션나 랑와도 주베 이렇게 주바 요 말에서 냐메 켜게 생게데 냐바메바 산게 좀 되게 켜게 생게데스 지바메바 지메고바 녜들라면 지가 아이 삼고에 내수다 미트바시네 지바르지라 현다가 껴시고를 삼 ingо에 내수다 미트바 말에서 지바메베 생게 자자보 나시 랑원데 주바 요 랑와도 주바 요 생게게 리달라 소바트 주파 시공게네 소 생게 자세 냐메 켜게 생게 대세 어디 뭐 랑와 요 민시에서도 랑와도 주바에서 와라 랑원에 주바 랑시게 주바 랑경어 주바세도 지바래 랑와도 주바 예바 민시 냐메 켜게 생게 대세 그래서 디 여기 개박 같이 손주 이와래 뭐 렉솔라 소바트 주간에 송바테 메가게 동이데 송교와래 이 동이 참 말해서 Tösone sungbe tongni de tongni chamore songsu yore. Tösose tadi tösorwa. Tösone sungbe tongni de tongni chamuyena ngo rawa mebate rawa de truba mebate tongni ye gongere songdo andinalya. Tende yanti jamlo tansa dugade. Ini choje tongbar she chera kare tongbar se ngo rawa ye me she nyame choje sengete tongba nyetembe sengete 동네 가르쳐 라와도 좀 말해세 어디서도 야 티버도 지라나
So, then again, here, from this perspective, and non-Buddhist teachers are not proponents of dependent arising. So thus, it is entirely fitting to attribute the teaching of dependent arising to our teacher, the Buddha, the master of sages. And this is stated in Nagarjuna's hymn to the world transcendent, so his praise to the Buddha, where he says that dialecticians assert that suffering is created by itself, created by another, by both self and another, or that they have no cause at all. You have stated it to be dependent arising. So here, when we talk about suffering, or sort of the world, the external environment, the beings within it, all of the various things that they enjoy and so forth, here, these various dialecticians assert that maybe things come from themselves, from a cause that is of the same nature as the result. But here, Buddhists would assert that that's not tenable. It's not logical for the cause and effect to be of the same nature, but rather the cause and effect need to be of a different nature. So something being created by itself is not tenable. And then for it to be created by another, this is something that is of a different nature, that is like in the sense of having its own kind of autonomous existence. Here, what is being refuted is not just production from a mere other, but rather the kind of production from a truly existent other, something that is inherently or autonomously established. This is the kind of production from another that is not accepted by particularly the Prasangikas. So here, it also is not the case that phenomena arise both from self and other, like some Jains and others assert that there is some kind of, the coordinating conditions or the sort of other, and the self is the substantial cause. But this is not, again, an acceptable mode of production, because all of these involve the causes having some kind of inherent existence or autonomous existence. So, and then, or that they have no cause at all. So the Buddha has also refuted that things arise causelessly, like say in the case of those Charvakas who assert such. But rather the Buddha, you have stated it to be dependent arising. So here, according to this praise for the Buddha, they're not in any of these categories of arising from any of the four extremes, in the sense of phenomena arising from some kind of truly existent, either itself or another. If it were the case that phenomena arose from another that were truly existent, it would be something that you could point to, that you could identify, say, this is that. But rather, all phenomena arise dependently, in the sense of being dependent on this process of designation. There's a basis of imputation or designation in the designating terms and concepts. So there's no inherently existent phenomena, something that has that kind of autonomous or a real existence from its own side. Whatever it is, the Buddha has declared that it is dependently originated, and that which originates through dependence, this you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists. You, peerless one, proclaim it in a lion's roar. So whatever type of phenomena it is, the Buddha has said that it lacks that kind of independent existence. And here, this then indicates that when we're speaking about empty in these verses, is. It's really referring to that most subtle level of emptiness, not just understanding it in a more coarse kind of a form. And the Buddha proclaims this like a lion's roar, in the way that he's totally fearless, because what he has realized and what he is declaring is in accordance with reality. If you have some kind of trepidation, or you aren't really sure that what you are saying is true or accords with reality, you might not be able to proclaim it like a lion's roar that kind of fear instills fear in all of those other animals. But rather, the Buddha declared that there was no independent existence, no autonomous existence, and thereby all phenomena are dependently originated.
뭐야? 다들 어디 뒤질려면 다들 단단데 가서라. 뭐 라와 유명시 된도가 냠에 주지 생기죠. 대 동반이 송배도 와. 근데 되게 가서라. 먼저 남지 뒤에 탐제 미다바 사제 탐제 동아와 초 탐제 다음에 봐. 동반 말한다. 초 탐제 다음에 봐. 양해를 내봐 쉬워서. 나와 가다가 자기 시송으로 와. 어디나네 초 탐제 다음에 봐 생기도 와. 초 탐제 다음에 봐서 다들 가를 송으로서지. 강사가 다음에도 책이 다음에서 강사 다다 이부 강사세티 라와도 주바메부터 장장 쓰기 엄마다. 디가서래. 라와도 주바메바세티. 디 임바테 가완도 순탄당 가지고 디가서래. 아이고. 시계변하라. 시계변하라. 로비 파고라게. 시계변라. 디그 라와 메바테 테나 따네 요 많이 소래. 시계변하. 디그 라와 요 메데 테나 따네 요 메. 라와도 주바 메바텔라 따메 바스고래. 저 탐제 따메 바세데. 저 컨디션에 랑게 당니데 랑게 ngo데 라와도 주베 ngo요 마레스. 어디에서네 저 탐제 따메 바스 길차게. 우마텐주 하시나라. 디그 라와 메바데 테나 따네 요 마이스 시게베 갑소데. 바발레. 디 제바 시게베 제바 로베 디로 나와드라바. 인데셰 자와레. 텔라 다지 자와니세 가싱고보 남 디카도 제바 자요라. 텔라 다지 자와네 가싱고보 남 제샬라 라마레베 ngo랑 신테스. 데메바네 다메바 오세. 샬라 라마레베 ngo랑 신테 메발야. 다메바스 그래세. 데메바네 다메바. 그냥 최다 가사지 남반이 손제. 근데 최기 다메다 가사. 라와도 주베 당니 메바들 다메세. 수 라와도 주베 당니 메바 다 라와도 주베 당니 메바 가갈 샤기라. 이니테 시게베 제바카돌 티오라. 텔라 랑게 ngo다 랑신다. 랑게 ngo다 랑신다. 라와다. 샬라 라마레 바셰차 카이바트네세. 그래서 남잠바 인소래. 다 찍바 인소래. 랑신게 메바 랑게 ngo 메바. 라와도 주베 메바. 샬라 라마레 바. 가서래. 라와도 주베. 어디서라. 아티 제바 자도 샬라 라마레 바세데. 어딜 카셰야. 아바 샬라 라마레 바세네테 똥니 레라 바시다라. 유단 깨는데 라레방가 저 또기도 와시치를 라레바 또기도 와세라. 어디 말이죠. 그래야 저런 무슨 데시게. 그래 현시 자와네세. 유진 샬라 라마레바 세와 민지세. 유단 깨는 라마레바세로. 이제 그래서 말이죠. 그럼 디 라마레바세데. 유진 라마레바세와 유진 라마레바세와 민지세. 타니에게 왕게 샤베 여바 지데베 타니에게 셰바시오라 디디레서 타이 타니에도 로이 타니에 여바 타니에베 셰발라 셴시 잘라스 대왕게 샤바 민베 라오스 근데 타니에게 왕게 샤바 민베 여바텔라 라와스 그래서 아주 도나리 여바 대한 지den게 타니에게 왕게 인기세 지den게 타니에게 왕게 샤베 왕게 인기 돈담바는 타니에게 왕게 샤바 마이나 돈담바 여바레도라 타니에게 왕게 샤바 마이나 타니에게 왕게 파샤이나 고이마인데 타니에게 왕게 샤고이나 라완도 주어요 말이야 라완도 주어지나 타니에게 왕게 계샤고 말이야 그라 라완도 주어를 되어라 어디인데 타녀 제왕게 타녀베 셰바들라 셰시차라 대왕게 샤바 민베 네 라와 소tin 디코라 디니코 시진지 데가 소에테다 와 단다디 시게베가 소에다 이 뜻서 값을 소에다 뜻서 강가잖아 라와 메바세데 타녀 제왕게 샤바 민바 코나게 문에 수여바이네 네 라와도 여바시거라 랑위네 여바 랑게고여 여바 랑신기 여바 속듭도 여바 따수도 여바 제수도 여바 시초라 랑위네 여나 라와도 주바체 여나 딱제제네 라야 여고래 시거다 라와도 주바체 여나 가긴 바세 티체 라비오 마라 이 메도 딱코 매버베서 매 마르다 때네 딱 보자면 샤고래 시거라 다시값을 용겨봐 땡진 대바를 좋아하고 때네 똥반이 때네 때네 딱 봐도 때니 오메라이네 때네 딱 보자면 샤고되게 예배 고치고 와래 체다 레기오 말해 라와도 두바 매버와 땡진 대바를 좋아하고 때네 똥반이 되셔 라운에 똥반이 되셔 어디인도 단단하게 가르치고 그러시나 라와도 마루바서 디 시게바급 소에 때다 인제바급 소에 어디 샹라 라마를 봐서 샹데 타녀 제왕게 샤바 민베 여발라 라운에 여버시고라 타녀 제왕게 샤바 민베 여버들 라운에 봐 타녀 제왕게 샤바 여버들 때네 딱베 여봐 어디 줄라나 안되겠죠
So here, as it says then in this verse, that which originates through dependence, you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists, you, the peerless one, proclaimed in a lion's roar. So here, all again, as the Buddha has taught in what are often called the four sort of seals of Buddhism, that all compounded phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated phenomena are in the nature of suffering. And we can just put all phenomena are selfless, and nirvana is peace. Here, when it comes to the understanding of what it is for phenomena to be selfless, this is where there are different sort of interpretations of what that means. And as we see in the praise to the transcendent by Nagarjuna, it's referring to that which originates through dependence. This you maintain to be empty, that no independent entity exists. So here, when we're talking about what it is for phenomena to be selfless, is to lack that kind of autonomous, independent sort of a nature, this existence from their own side. When we examine the nature of phenomena, there is no sort of truly autonomously, inherently existent nature. And this is also, as it is stated in Aryadeva's 400 verses, that all these things have no autonomous nature. Therefore, they have no self. So selflessness here is referring to explicitly that lack of some kind of an autonomous nature. And here, there's sort of various kind of synonyms for this that come up in both the commentary to the 400 verses by Chandrakirti, and then also Jela Matsongapa's commentary to that particular passage. But here, where it refers to phenomena are all these things not having some kind of autonomous nature, this isn't just referring to them not being having a nature that is not dependent upon causes and conditions. But when it says that phenomena don't have this sort of own nature, intrinsic nature, something that is autonomous or that is not dependent upon others, it's not just referring to not being a kind of nature that is not dependent upon causes and conditions, but a sort of nature that would be independent from our designating, imputing mentally. So when we, again, with the conventions of thought and terms, we designate various phenomena. That is part of the dependent existence that they have. So to have an autonomous nature would be to not depend upon that process of designation, not being posited by designation. There's another sutra passage in which the Buddha talks about how all of this exists by mere convention. These phenomena are not autonomously, independently existent from their own side with that kind of solid or real existence. So here, when it says that which is not dependent, here referring to the verse in the praises by Nagarjuna here in the 400 verses, this is referring to, again, some kind of nature that exists from its own side in the sense of being independent of causes and conditions, but also independent of that sort of mental designation. And so if something has that kind of existence from its own side, the sort of autonomous existence, intrinsic existence, it is able to bear or withstand analysis, as in we could find something within that basis of designation we could point to and say, this is that phenomena. But because we're not able to find such a thing, it is merely dependently designated. And so again, this does not mean that phenomena are not existent, but rather that they are merely dependently designated. So there is another verse in which it is said that the Buddha, having taught what is dependently designated as empty, and that is itself the middle way. So when we're looking at what it means for phenomena to be selfless, to not have some kind of a self, this is made quite explicit in these various passages that it is referring to that kind of autonomous nature. And autonomous is not just referring to not depending upon causes and conditions, but also being independent of that process of mental imputation, mental designation.
Oh yeah, that this one. What I don't get the Karshe Guru Sena. That's on a sumbe over Rao you made it. Yamichu Sengit Tongbani Sengit Ekone Sumbere said Tongbani Rao to Trube Tombala Song Shasgora. Oh, this she get bata. Oh, Tezuna Soyate Rao you may said Tileshas. It Tanya Yawanga Shaba Maimba, you Rawin and Mebatilla. Rawa to Meba Song Shas. Oh, this so tan Shenda Sunju to the Chiborish dose. Rawa to Meba, Rawin and Meba, Rangan Meba. Shella Ramaleba. Rale Mabel so the number is which to she can driven out there, daughter. Oh, Tezu Chibarishas, that he can do some down church to some church in those. This year, what is
So here, what I'm trying to get at is that in the various kind of sutras, as well as like this praise by Nagarjuna, when it's talking about emptiness, and emptiness is referring to phenomena not having that kind of independent or autonomous existence. There are many sort of synonyms for this, but it is we should understand this as not being a sort of autonomy that is independence from just causes and conditions, but that kind of autonomy, existence from its own side, existence intrinsically by means of its own characteristics, is referring to a kind of existence that is independent of our mentally designating. And so this is what is being negated in the sense of and describing emptiness, both here in these various sutras, as well as in Aryadeva's 400 verses and Chandrakirti's commentary to it.
Oh, yeah. What the nation she dance, yeah. Gumulutu, the Salujambe, Silur Shabale. Gumulutu, the Salujambe, Drabatella, suggestion that she done, this Silas in Drabachi, Yungudo, the Chisuchebatina, Sonjaso. Tale Mai Shale means it, that is Tamal says as one. Tale Chigmare, Shale Chigmare say. Nida Chebu Tuleme, Nigale Chigmare. Chebabo. Chebabo, do my two chebabon de Yordo. Do talk by his, do you want to give a mato? Shanda Kujin Shanda Kayama, Koran Tuzu Wagi, Ranshin Kiki on your race. Do talk by his stitch. New Chukanga can get to Tuzu Wagi on the race. Yes, you are dead. Do Chebutule means it. Do talk by one give a mares. If she wants you so, she means on you la soba. You can chebo chebama. Ranshin le me, you mean means it. Ranshin le chomare, you may le chomare. 교단 깬진 죽어야 도만 매배 두셔나 교단 깬 치기돼 그 도마요 말했어 니네 주된 사바 중어를 뒤따를 주대요 말했어요 근데 셰요 말은 나버려 현在이네 지 30만은 되면도 와 딱바샤 안 뒤따려지 매버렸어 그때 용해요 말을 딱바이나 딱반 유럽 마저 지금 대북기게 있는 뒤따도 끼고 그랬어요 나는 마지에 갑지네 뒤따도 마지고 그랬어 딱바디 껍질 이렇게 껍질 마지네 그 딱반 두요 말은 유아지 주고요라 대북기 와다 매기에 그 너것이 사바시 내기요라 그 딱바리요 말 전에 가서라 유단 깨진 주방야 도마매매 되잖아 유단 깨리야 도마께요 말 용한다게 시르게 땡진 되버려 중앙시스 이 솔루션도 값을 용안에 중앙에 시기도 하지 딸시에서 근데라 어디 질렀나야
So then we have a quotation from Nagarjuna's verses on the rice Seedling Sutra. So here there are various sort of types of commentaries, and this one is kind of in verse. And so he says then, nothing is produced from itself or from another, from both or from time. So here, again, going through the various kinds of causes that are posited by non-Buddhists, for example, time as like a permanent sort of principle that gives rise to all of the various phenomena within the universe. That, again, is not something that is possible to posit. To say that everything is produced from a divine creator, such as Ishvara, from a principal nature or without a cause. None of these are sort of acceptable. To assert that something is, say, developed or produced by a permanent cause, again, if something is permanent, there can't be a time in which it is giving rise to results and a time in which it is not giving rise to results. So it would have to be the case that it is always producing whatever result it is, or that it never could produce a result, because how can something that is permanent have different sort of stages or states? And so in arising from causes and conditions comes from beginningless time. Thus, you assert that external things arise in dependence on the 5 causes. So again, it is not possible to point to a beginning, like either like a particular atom, say, tracing back the continuity of that. We can't find an original initial cause, but yet things arise from causes and conditions beginninglessly. And thereby, Buddhists assert that all things arise in dependence on these 5 causes.
뭐야 근데 마한데 가서래 여기 개버서 시술이 또스메다 같은데 여기도 알려줘야지 동반이 시도 잡고 껴와서 왔다서 강간에 가고를 해서라 껴와다 수다 짜다 가살라 소바 어때서 강가 가고를 해서 근데 시수지요라 오양 개방가 시소나 이 강가 가고 말을 랑원에 주베 껴와다 가고다 계속 가고 랑원에 주베 다 가고 다 가고 말했어 근데 수지요라 어디니 왜 나네 이래 인중이 껴와면 많이 배셔봐서도 이제 대바를 좀 껴와도 껴와고네 말했어 이제 숨겨라 지금 망보지 처음에 시시에 껴와서도 껴와고네 이네 코로나랑 주 껴와서 거래했어 이제 대바를 좀 껴와도 껴와면 말했어 지종가 받아 대전에 이제 대바를 좀 껴와도 껴와고네 그래서 랑원에 주베 껴와 말마다 그 껴와서 하고 그래서 거라 근데 개배 쉐바 맨다 아니데 뚜꺼 봤습니다. 안데데 두세르. 당부 오마 땡큐에 감데 땡진 데버는 좋아. 라케와다. 가바서 쉐베스. 오마 땡큐 루리아. 땡진 데버는 좋아. 라케와다 가바라 소바. 그래서 라와도 주바요 말에 셔시라. 오마 땡큐에 감데 땡진 데버는 좋아. 라케와다 가바서 쉐베. 땡중게 껴와데 껴와 챙이 바이 남셔나세. 아주와 거라 내가 껴와 챙이바 많이 껴와 챙이바 많이 받아 임베 개베 쉐바 메다니 예세라 수당부데 네 주당부대 또 까마 매주 도지 소지 송래 시제 까마 우리 가서 까주 개바 까마 매주 도지 송래인데 송샤서라 대중네 돌에 깨년 디바점도 송배스 대진 대바를 좋아서 도나리아 깨년 디바점지 좋아들 대중세 대진 대바를 좋아 송거래서 송변디니 요구다부 केवाना रागे क्यों जिगदेना काना से टाकबा तेदा ते क्यों ये से राशे के तेबा ये ताले कांगे चिकबरवा ते जितेबर जोआ जिगदेना जुदा के खडे छि केवा तुंगु ने तिना शिरे मदो तिले देबा शेंदा कुशिवा मारे सर राशे के तेबा ngoborma wa nam ji trupte takbe yunamdas ताले के बरे शेले के बरे निगले के बरे चिसो के बरे जिगने के बरे शेर eso que le marece era que digo que va saber temba y la hace tenye de bere que va simbete y la tengo la que va shimi ya donde todo la que va corriendo yo marece ahora ajo tanye tu chi she ma to che tengo la que va shile ya me va ya jitenje ngone wa jitenje tanye ke wa chen se ahora jitenje ngone tenjo la tenga da 근데 맨저 까메이 베스 지대지 통주 나줄이 전에 깨와당 각바당 로아당 와라 소바트도 샤고레스 버려 생으로 캘렘바 시제스 깨와당 각바 요새데 생은 지대 통주 나시 전에 캘리기 요마도 영원에 때도 요 말에서 제야 제바나 깨와 요바시 깨메도 쇼게 값을 달레메 샬메 일메시 다시제네 केवा कागे और ड्रॉ द वाला सब कागे हो रहा निति कार कागे हो रहा है ना जने या चे बना केवा ये बाशे के में तो सोमा माई बे के बचे ने का ने केवा नमा ये बाशे ता सिने में बरे ड्रॉ तिंदे मारे शेरा शिले तांबु ने केवा में बते में बपा से और शेवर मा तो ये बाशे में बसे शे बते मारे से केवा शिमी या केवा de shile meba ina nawa tenjo ge kewa mengelas nawa samlia teji deber jo aso ne chi thode aso ne besu ye chun chi thode are yores teji deber jo kewa mengelas ngone la kewa dang ka pa me jas andi tenga tandam la chebe se tenga kora de ka gore se tenga meba shibe isu ne shi shi sungora ngone la केवा दंगा में जा जिते जे मोर तेंडे जे केवा तेंडे जे केंगा नावाने जिते बे तोंजुलिया तेंजे देबर छे केवा दंगा तोने छुबे केंगा इंदे को नावा छुने तोते योरेस केंगा जोबाने शाला ट्रबे जेसु छुबा चामो केंगा शायदे जितेना ट्रबा चामजे जेसु छुने लब्योर मसे तोले केंगा यो मारेस केवा चेया मटुब्या नावा तेंडेला केंगा चेया छारोआ केवा तले दे टुब्यो मारते जे नावा तले डामदे तेंडे छाया योरेसे केना नामको ते पेदले नामका देखो राशिन जे तोंबर केगे यो मारेस तेल जुआ के यो मार इना दांग ला जुआ दो जोरे तिंदा तेलु ता निमा ता वेसेता तेंडे मेंबला सोबा तेंडे को डामदे कोरा राशिन केगे यो मारे मेबरे ने लुबुर तो केगे तेंडे नाया योरेस नादो रुवा शेदा याना क्युमे ताला सो नावाना नाशी सो ताला चे माटु क्या ताला सो चे ना रुवा क्युमे ताला दबजे नावा यने को चे छुने चे तोंदे योरा तदा ngole tata lambu ngone te kege yo mara ina nawa ya tata lambu da ke bada pembele so te de toya yoro o ti na shire so o ti pa to chi na
Yeah.
mambore
Um, So here, then we get into this section dealing with a kind of slightly different assertions of various Tibetan masters. So some, when we say that production from the four extremes is refuted, then dependently arisen production is sort of what is left over. But then there's a question of whether that is actual production. So here, this gets into the assertion that a dependently arisen production is not actual production or not an actual production. So here, the Prasangika Madhyamaka system explains arising and ceasing with respect to dependent arising. That's the only way we can really talk about production. And so is dependently production, therefore genuine production? This question sort of arises. And so again, we've refuted the idea that there could be production from its own side, sort of some kind of autonomous, independent kind of production that would be from either of those four extremes. So what is left over is this kind of dependent origination. And is that dependently arisen production actual production? The kind of question arises. So the response to that will first begin with some of the assertions of the Kagyu masters. So on this question, some scholars assert production that is not genuine, and other scholars assert production that is genuine. I will say a little about the former position based mainly on the statements of the master Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, but on others as well. So this is mainly the idea of some of the Kagyu masters. And so they say that according to Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, when the Buddha states in the Rice Seedling Sutra that dependent arising is just these conditions, he points out that when such things as sprouts are produced, they arise from causes and conditions that are seen by and known to the world. He clearly indicates that a sprout does not arise from those causes postulated by Buddhist essentialist and non-Buddhist tenets. So it can't be a kind of production from any of those four extremes. Moreover, although in reality production is baseless, there's no sort of basis for that, it is existent from the perspective of the world. So from the perspective of the world, there is no other way than to posit causes and effects arising and ceasing. So therefore, scholars such as Karmapa Mikyo Dorje assert the perspective of others, that is worldly persons, that this dependent arising or dependently originated production exists for the perspective of the worldly. So, it is also the case that, furthermore, it is not the case that in existent productions, there's some kind of existent production that is then refuted through analysis, that on analysis becomes non-existent, for there was no production in the first place. However, this does not contradict the appearance of a dependently arisen production. So here he continues by saying that although in actuality there is no production or cessation, really truly existent production or cessation, there is an appearance of the dependent arising of production and cessation according to the perspective of worldly persons. This is mistaken production and cessation. Thus, positing a dependently arisen production and cessation is merely in compliance with what is commonly accepted by others. So there is no actual production, but production and cessation are merely posited in accordance with what is commonly accepted. So although production is not established at all, the appearance of production and cessation independent arising is nevertheless possible. It is analogous to the unchanging natural emptiness of the sky, in which, though there is nothing at all, it is still feasible for a great variety of things, such as the change in the light due to clouds, a dust storm, sunlight, or darkness to appear. So we have this sort of empty sky, there's nothing in it whatsoever, but due to various conditions, you can have certain appearances arise. Or likewise, a magician's horse, elephant, or other creation appears, even though there is no actual horse or other object existing at the site of the appearance. So it is feasible for anything, a horse or an elephant, for example, to appear. Oh, 거기면
건다.
oh yeah.
tende je ngobo tatande kebe shisu tabe yunte ni sungwara tende je ngobo nam sanje je sebo la tene chia madu ji chia kelang do me ja se xiangor na wa samla kunzu tinjung ge kenga so na so rongo se xianji nang ju na shi chena tende la ya tenje de bar jo na wa dam de cha ju yor Tandangwa le sanje sisu le tode kan yo mare sungwara. Ona ome kam dere kewa shimi ina se. Oma be kable oma tenjo kam delia. Kewa tsawa na mebe ina. Tashi kewa gogba da kewa yang gogba ina mshina tedar hinde se. Kenga kawiyo sungwara. Tashi kan rungi kewa le shenbe kewa misibe kewa dan tashi kewa niga. Tondamdo masa tanya tuyang gogba ina ose. 다시 깨어날 만두배 깨와지 요 말을 송거라. 어디 인도서 그 깨와대 다시 날 두고 그래서. 인도는 다시 깨와 까바나시 지나 깨와야 까바 인세. 남도 요 말을 지나 깨와 다녀도 요 말에서. 진짜 까바 인세. 오늘 대조게 깨와서 메조 감사. 오늘 대제 레버 중에 깨와 탱교로를 샤고 말በ스나. 탱교에 감데레 대조 인배 교생게 깨와서 주벌 제나네세 땡겨에 로들에 땡진 레버 중에 깨와 유어가 되게 깨와 유어서 좀내 드 말에서 땡진 레버 중에 깨와 레기 요 말에서 깨와 유어나 랑군에 주베 깨와 유어 고래 요 말에서 거라 땡겨에 감데레 땡중 인베 교생게 깨와서 주벌 제나네 캬바 치질로도 주베 따서 주래서 니 캬바 맹게레 캬바 치질로래 땡중이나 깨와 가서 마인배 캡그래서 뭐라 땡중이 깨와 맨데도 얘들 땡중이 깨와 생기버는 전화네 뭐 마에 다시 가루기 딸에 깨와 담바 다시 가루기 깨와 참마다 정어라 땡가 임바 그 우마 땡겨야 로지 까네 라야 우마바라게 땡중이 딸에 깨와 kenga tetaru yobar tanani langche je chudan drawar drashi niga chinchi to dhruwa yan drate tena sirta dan chata kange chinkyang chinchi to dhruwa sungso se tena kyujingle kiwan gobe tenchung sungba gashi tenchung ki kyujingle kiwa chibana norwa yeshe umabe kebe 타를 깨wan 고자 근데 내가 제가 다시 어디 가래 오늘 마음 붙여서 누가 샤션 다시 땡가자 당에도 땡중게 땡가서 마오 시서와네 닝부 매제 마와네 뭐보다라 대다라는 것이 어디 말로 샹들 도베스 세워야지 땡중게 땡가서 랑로지 대변 줘봐 대다라는 우마베트자 전다 대송 거라 전다 대지라 안 발로션 패치 되리 삼도 대지 대바르 줘에 땡가셔야 돼 땡강원에 말해서 그래 다시 깨와까지 깨와야 까도래 선 거라 제송가 말이지 다시 깨와 나를 깨와 되고 말해 랑원에 두배 깨와이네 다게 생기 니가 규밀에 깨와 시부 까루시요 그래 이 까야 요 말해서 이 까그리마다 깨와 까요 말아 단다 개반되기 시주체는 지다 깨와야 까고래 선 거라 지다 깨와 까고래 지다 깨와 마가나 다기 요 말이 생기 요 말이세네 깨와단 로와단 와 요 말이 파까 야 라루게 떼지 데버 중앙세야지 요슬람나 나라저 통주된 나신 템바 임바디 동면되네 나라저 통주 나신데 여섬 단다 깨와요 가봐요 dro아요 시데 이 참마대데 그래서 그거라 이 강가 매가 소거려서 이나 나기 돈다 매신도 나기 요섬서 어떻게 순수신구도 되려 이 다시 깨워봐까 야 떼지 데버주에 깨와요스는 랑부치 주의께보다 집을 랑부치 추나 진지고 살아 아니 랑부치 상야 사갈 파데 수데시냐 또버쳐 살아 어디나 시리에서 저한테 마 롭시체 로션에 되래 예배 송주 거 봤삼래 마도 단단히 가셔야 주연이 그렇게 가르쳐 제종가 뭐 시주도 원해 용구라. 단단히 개발신 시주들을 해서 약을 받습니다. 오랑게 두두치라 아니마 배제를 하셔는 되게 삼게. 우로이.
So here, just to remind ourselves that we are talking about the kind of assertions of other scholars right now, and the view of Tsongkhapa and the Prasangika Madhyamakas will come below. So here, picking up again with this view of certain other scholars like Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, to say that no dependently arisen phenomena can be established or asserted in accordance with a Buddha's way of seeing things, in that there's this is only to the perspective, continuing all the varieties of production and so forth of conventional phenomena are feasible only as mere appearances to worldly persons. This is their understanding. So again, this sort of qualm is raised. If production is without basis in the Madhyamaka system, just as the production from the four alternatives is refuted, isn't production also refuted? And so the kind of answer that they give is like, if you have, as there is no production other than production from the four alternatives, in this view, not only is the ultimate existence of production and production from the four alternatives refuted, but also their conventional existence is refuted. And so then the sort of qualm comes. Well, would one then say that the Madhyamakas do not even posit dependently arisen production and so forth? And so the answer given here is that in the Prasangika Madhyamaka system, if one were to establish production by reason of its being a dependent arising, you would incur the fault of giving a contradictory reason, which entails a wrong pervasion. They do not assert that dependently arisen production is actual production. If dependently arisen production were posited as genuine production, then the Prasangika Madhyamaka would incur the fault of first refuting the view of the essentialists that production and sensation are valid and genuine by reason of any of the four alternatives, and then in turn positing that there is real production and cessation by the reason of dependent arising. So here, according to this particular view, to refute all of the four alternatives of production and then to come back and say, well, there is production because it's dependently originated is sort of like an elephant's bath. He washes, so like an elephant goes and washes themselves off, and then while they're still sort of wet or damp, they go and they roll in the mud again. And so it's like, what was the point of that? So to have refuted all of these various alternatives, and then in turn, according to them, to come back and posit dependent origination as a reason for there to be some kind of production, it is contradictory. So it is like, again, like an elephant's bath. These two views, real production from one of the four alternatives and dependently arisen production, are similar in that they are both bonds. It is like saying that whether one is bound by a golden chain or an iron chain, one is still bound by a chain. So this is the kind of refutation given by the view by other scholars. And again, we will get to Tsongkhapa's view below, so we shouldn't get confused by that. Oh, yeah.
And thank you again, Rinpoche, and thank you, Katrina, for your excellent translations. And for those of you watching online, we hope you'll join us again next Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific time. 8 a.m., Pacific time. We'll finish with some prayers. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Nitayami
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Thank you.